With over 4,210 acres of land, Griffith Park is home to some of Los Angeles' most iconic and recognizable attractions and locations. The Observatory, the Hollywood sign, and a 160-year-old curse. Join me as we step into the shadows and go over some of the history of the park and the curse that was placed on the land. Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of In the Shadows. I'm your host, Mello, the Living Shadow. Now, the story of this cursed park starts way before the land was even a park and before it was even cursed, around the year 1775, with Jose Vicente Feliz, a Spanish soldier who accompanied Juan Bautista de Anza on an expedition to the area. You see, Feliz was tasked with looking over the first residence of El Pueblo de la Reina de Los Angeles, essentially the location of the modern-day Los Angeles River. After some time, he would go on to serve as the comisionado of this land, overseeing the town's civil administration on behalf of Alta California's governor. Sometime around his retirement in 1800, the Spanish government rewarded Feliz for his service by granting him 6,647 acres of land on the outskirts of Pueblo. This land would be known as Rancho Los Feliz. The land would later become what is now part of modern-day Silver Lake, Los Feliz, and yes, Griffith Park. After Jose Vicente Feliz's death in 1816, his family maintained control over the ranch, and it reportedly prospered and did really well while under their control. That is until 1863, when the then current patriarch Don Antonio Feliz passed away due to smallpox. Now here is where the history gets a little hazy and mixed with legend. So Antonio resided on the land with his sister and housekeeper Soledad, and his niece Doña Petronilla, who the land was meant to go to if Antonio passed. Unfortunately, that's not how things played out. You see, while smallpox gripped Don Antonio, 19-year-old Petronilla was sent away to protect her from the deadly and contagious disease. During this time, Don Antonio Feliz was visited by an influential acquaintance, Don Antonio Cornell, and a lawyer, Don Inocante, who apparently created a will that gave all of the land to Cornell. A story claims that a stick was attached to the back of Don Antonio Feliz's head to help the poor dying man nod his head in agreement to the new will. Regardless if that's exactly how the will portion of the legend played out, the land was willed to Cornell, and it was safe to say that Doña Petronilla was not happy that her family's land was given to someone else. So she decided to curse the land and the men who stole her birthright. According to Horace Bell's book On the Old West Coast, the exact curse laid by Petronilla was, and I quote, "Your falsity shall be your ruin. The substance of the Feliz family shall be your curse. The lawyer that assisted you in your infamy and the judge shall fall beneath the same curse. The one shall die an untimely death, the other in blood and violence. You, Señor, shall know misery in your age, and although you die rich, your substance shall go to vile persons. A blight shall fall upon the face of this terrestrial paradise. The cattle shall no longer fatten, but sicken on its pastures. The fields shall no longer respond to the toil of the tiller. The grand oaks shall wither and die. The wrath of heaven and the vengeance of hell shall fall upon this place." Now be sure to take this quote with a grain of salt, because according to Bell's account of events, Petronilla dropped dead after laying the curse on the land. She also was apparently blind in his account, when historical records show no evidence of her being blind or her dying on the spot at all. She actually died circa 1896 or 1897, so her dying on the spot is something that was just added more likely for dramatic effect. Now what is true and can be accounted for are the series of unfortunate events that happen to those who own the land afterwards. Whether these are just the result of the curse or a strange coincidence is for you to decide. The lawyer, Don Inocante, was apparently shot and killed. One could say he died a death of blood and violence. As for the judge, he apparently also met an untimely end. Don Cornell's family supposedly slowly died of misfortune and disease. When Cornell passed away, he left the land to his young wife, who promptly remarried. Her new husband and her fought over the inheritance, and in the ensuing divorce, the lawyers consumed most of the inheritance. Then, in late 1868, C.V. Howard owned part of the land and sold the land's water rights for a nice profit. While celebrating his good fortune, he apparently was shot and killed at the saloon he was celebrating at. The next person to own the land was someone who went by the name Leon Lucky Baldwin, who unfortunately did not live up to his nickname. When he started a ranch and dairy farm on the property, the cattle on the land would keep dying. Fires would start and they destroyed all of the grain, grasshoppers would devour all other crops, and basically nothing went right. He eventually went bankrupt as a result of this and was forced to sell the land to pay for the mortgage. Baldwin was also reportedly killed by being gunned down by outlaws. The land was then sold to Thomas Bell, a financier from San Francisco. Although he did not own the land for long before selling it, he too died in an unnatural way. Bell was ill for 2 months with a skin disease and other ailments before the night of October 16, 1892. He fell down the rear stairs of his mansion in a state of confusion. He sustained severe brain and other injuries and died within several hours. Some stories of his death claim that he was pushed by his mistress, but his death was ruled the result of a concussion due to an accident. Before Thomas Bell's death, he sold the land to Colonel Griffith J. Griffith, the final private owner of the land. On December 8, 1882, Griffith purchased what, after subdivisions and other subtractions, was left of the original property. He partnered with Charles Sketchley and Frank Burkett to open up a 680-acre ostrich farm. Yes, an ostrich farm that doubled as a public attraction to try to earn some money. In 1889, Griffith closed the ostrich farm. Some sources cite financial difficulties and others say the real estate boom tapered off, but the real reason is unclear. What is certain is that the story takes another dark turn right about now. Since the ostrich farm closed, Burkett swore revenge and went looking for Griffith with a gun. Frank Burkett eventually caught up with him outside of a local cemetery and shot him. Luckily for Griffith, Burkett had loaded his shotgun with birdshot by mistake, and Griffith was only wounded. But Burkett thought that he had in fact killed Griffith, and as a result ended up taking his own life right afterwards. After recovering, Griffith donated 3,015 acres of the land to the city of Los Angeles in December of 1896 to become a public park. Some say he did this to get away from the curse, and others say he did it out of the kindness of his heart and to give back to the city of Los Angeles. By 1903, Griffith was showing signs of being ill. He had frequent bouts of paranoia. He was apparently convinced that he was going to be poisoned, and the ones who were going to do it were going to be his wife Christina and the Pope, who were working together to have him killed. He would insist on swapping dinner plates with her whenever they went out to eat, and his wife, being a kind person, thought that he was just overworked and arranged a relaxing summer holiday for the both of them at a nearby resort in Santa Monica. But on the last day of their trip, Griffith went up to his suite and his wife, apparently holding a Bible or a prayer book, and he asked his wife to kneel and pray with him. She did, but when she opened her eyes, Griffith was pointing a revolver directly at her, and he shot her point blank. Christina had just enough time to move her head, but she was seriously wounded and staggered and jumped out of a nearby window, falling 2 stories until she hit an awning and literally bounced onto a balcony. She was still conscious, and she managed to scramble through an open window and raise the alarm. Griffith was immediately arrested, and when questioned at first, he said that his wife had, in fact, accidentally shot herself and then jumped out of a window in a panic. This, of course, was not true. He was sent to trial for attempted murder, and the lawyers for his defense were, of course, the best money he could buy at the time. They built a defense of temporary insanity brought on by alcoholic poisoning, and he was found guilty and sent to San Quentin Penitentiary for 2 years. I think a light sentence, but this was actually the maximum sentence that could be handed out at the time. Once out, Griffith claimed to be a changed man, and he became interested in prison reform and would give speeches on the topic and really wanted to bring back the glory that once was associated with his name. And to do so, he believed that he should help develop the park more for the public and wanted to build an observatory and an amphitheater, but of course the city of Los Angeles did not want to accept money from an attempted murderer. Only after his death in 1919 did the city accept money that he put in a trust. Now, many people believe that the curse ended with the last private owner of the land, while others believe that all of the negative events that have occurred on the land since Griffith's death are the result of the curse and that it is still ongoing. Events that are often brought up are like those in 1932, when a down-on-her-luck actress named Peg Entwistle jumped to her death from the edge of the Hollywood sign. And then just 1 year later, Griffith Park was the site of the deadliest fire in city history at that point in time, the Mineral Wells Dam Canyon brush fire that claimed the lives of 29 firefighters. Or, Often what's pointed out is what happened on the evening of October 31st, 1976, when Rand Garrett and Nancy Jeanson, a young Hollywood couple, were inconceivably crushed by a nearby tree that toppled over upon them while they were making love upon a picnic table. All these events are often attributed to the curse. But what do you believe? Do you think the curse is still alive and real, or are all of these horrible events linked to the land just a strange coincidence? Let me know down below what you feel. And until next time, thank you for stepping into the shadows, and remember that you matter.